A very important and frequently asked question, which is good, is what on earth is an increment after all? We keep talking about this increment and done increment. But what on earth are they? Done increment is a useful piece of functionality or even a useful solution that is going to get you closer to the product goal. It needs to be usable. We're hoping it's valuable, and we're hoping it's getting us closer to the product goal. The getting us closer to the product goal and valuable is what we think. It's a hypothesis, it's an assumption, which means we need to release it to validate those assumptions with our stakeholders and customers. The usable part, however, is the critical thing. That is what we can control. And you can't really talk about the increment without talking about the definition of done, because the definition of done is our commitment of quality to the increment. In fact, it is what allows us to make an increment, because once we reach the definition of done for any individual product backlog item, that is to say, any item on the product backlog that is built on enough that it meets the standards in the definition of done, becomes an increment. And once we have that increment, the product owner can release that increment whenever they want. Several times a sprint, or maybe not even in the sprint. Maybe they want to hold on to it for a little bit longer, or 2 or 3 sprints. But by doing so, they realize that they are accepting additional risk. Because the longer we go between creating the increment and releasing it, the more risk we're taking on as a result. Because it doesn't matter what the customers tell us, until we get it in their hands, we don't know if it was actually valuable or not. Another one of those very uncomfortable truths that we have to cope with. But it's also why it's so important to get this Scrum and Agile stuff right. Because by getting it right, we are reducing a huge amount of risk from our business and from the work we do. And I don't know about you, but in my business, less risk is more better. So how does an increment differ from delivering functionality or the end result of a project? And it kind of comes down to that end result part of it. A project tends to deliver a finite thing. You only really get to see it and release it at the end of the project. With an increment, the moment an item is done, a feature, a function is done, we can release it because it's an increment and we can get it out the door to validate if it works or not. We do not have to, and we shouldn't wait until all of it is done, because by doing that, we are essentially doing, project management, but with bells and whistles, and still working with all of that extra debt of risk. There you go. Sometimes I know words. So the main thing with an increment is not only do we build them one at a time, one product backlog item at a time, meets the definition of done, we can get it at the door. However, the increment is iterative and incremental, kind of part of the name. So we build on the same increment over and over again. So as you build the first increment, it met the definition of done, we can validate that it's valuable or not. Based on that feedback, we can build the next increment. But as we work on that next increment, and this is a little bit of a brain teaser, you've got the original first increment you build. Now you're working on the second product backlog item, getting it to meet the definition of done, but it only becomes an increment once it successfully integrates with the existing increment without breaking it. Which means not only does this new part have to meet the definition of done, they both together have to meet the definition of done. Now for bonus points, if you've improved your definition of done and raised the quality standard from when you built the first one to when you built the second one, guess what? Now they both need to meet the new definition of done's standard. That is very easy for me to say, but it's certainly not easy to do. But this is where another very important thing comes into play, and it's the idea of total cost of ownership. It's cheaper to not fix that problem now. So let's work right now. However, if you don't fix it now and you let that problem fester, it will gather interest. And by the time you're in production or you're a year down the line or even a month down the line, fixing that problem, fixing that old stuff that could have been improved then and there, is going to be anywhere from 100 to 1,000 times more expensive. That is not hyperbole. That is based on very good meta studies done on the cost of fixing problems in production versus creation. So that is why the increment is so important. And in fact, there's a little joke / saying that goes, if you boil down Scrum to just 2 words, it's done increment. That is what Scrum is here to enable you to achieve, is getting these done increments out the door. I argue that done increment is overkill and redundant because it's not an increment unless it is done. But we really just want to hammer it in that unless it's done, it is not an increment. And unless it's an increment, you can't release it. And until we release it, we are carrying risk. So what we want to do is figure out a way to quickly create stuff that is done, get out the door to validate risk, and deliver value. So I'm going to increment this. All right. Thank you very much for watching. And if you like what you saw and you want to hear more about what I've got to say in the future on similar questions, or if you have a question yourself, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. That's the easiest way to get a hold of me. You can also email me at oscar.styf@pragmaticshift.com. Please do like the video, share it with others if you think they might benefit from it, or follow my profile to see stuff as they come out as well. And I would love to be your Scrum Trainer. So please find my content on pragmaticshift.com. You can find the courses I've scheduled for the year, or on scrum.org.com as well. Look forward to seeing you in my classroom soon.